So here we are back in Visual Studio, and we've got the solution open from where we left off in the previous module. What we're going to do is add a new class to this project. So I'll just come down to add new class, and we're going to call this class text file processor. I'm just going to remove these usings, and we're also going to convert this to use file scoped namespaces. This class is going to be responsible for processing the contents of text files. So we'll start off here with a couple of properties, one to represent the input file path and one to represent the output file path where the modified data will be written to. Next, we'll add a constructor which requires the input file path and output file path as parameters. And I'm just going to add this process method. We'll come back to this in just a moment. So now we've created this file, we're going to make use of it inside the file processor class. So we'll just open the file processor and we'll come down here to where we've got the switch statement. What we're going to do is modify this .txt case, and instead of calling this process text file method, we're instead going to create a new instance of the text file processor we just created. As the input file path, we're going to specify the in-progress file path that we created earlier, and for the output file path, we'll specify this completed file path variable. We'll fix this error up in just a moment. So now we've created an instance of the text file processor, we can go ahead and call the process method. What we can do now is come down here and we can delete this entire process text file method because we're no longer using it. We'll just perform some cleanup here. I'm just going to remove these commented lines of code, and we also now don't want these two lines of code here. The reason for this is that we're now going to be outputting the completed file from within the text file processor. We're not going to be simply moving the file from the in-progress file path to the completed file path. So let's delete these two lines, and we'll also remove this comment just to clean things up. What we need to do is now take all of these lines of code, and we'll cut them and come up here and paste them after we've determined the type of file using the path.getExtension method. So we'll just paste the code in here before the switch statement and tidy this up a little bit. And now if we come down here, we can see that we no longer get the error for the completed file path variable here. What we'll also do in this file processor is, after the switch statement, we'll just output the fact that we completed processing, and then we'll go and delete the in-progress file. Let's come back to the text file processor and we'll go and fill out this process method. In this first example, we're going to be reading in the entire text file into memory into a single string instance. So we'll start off by defining a string variable called original text, and into this we're going to read the contents of the input file. To do this, we're going to make use of one of the static methods on the file class, the readAllText method. There's a couple of overloads of this method, one which just takes the path to the file that we want to read, and another overload that takes an encoding. In our case here, we're going to reference the input file path property of this class. So now when we execute this line of code, the original text string will contain all of the text from the specified input file. Now that we've loaded this data into memory, we can go and perform the required processing. To keep things simple in this demo, all we're going to do is convert the original data to uppercase. To do this, we're just going to call toUpperInvariant. In a real production application, you're probably going to be performing more complex processing than this, but this will serve to illustrate the file input and output. So now that we've processed the original data from the original file, we need to write out the processed data to a new file. To do this, once again, we can make use of a static method on the file class, this time the writeAllText method. There's also async versions of these methods available. This overload of the writeAllText method requires us to specify the path to the file that we want to create. In our case, it's the output file path property from this class, and the second parameter is a string which represents the contents to be written to that file. In this case, it's the process text variable which contains the uppercase version. Let's build this to make sure we haven't introduced any errors, and the build succeeds. We'll head back to File Explorer and we'll delete the backup, complete and processing directories, just so we're starting with a clean slate, and we'll check that there's nothing in the input directory. If I just open up data1.txt, you can see that this file contains 3 lines of text with the first character capitalized and the rest in lowercase. Let's head back to Visual Studio and we'll go and run this new version of the application. We can now go and copy data files into the watched input directory. So what we'll do is copy data1.txt and paste that into the input directory. We get the file system watcher events, and after a short delay we should see data1.txt processed. And if we navigate to the complete directory, we can see the file's been processed here, and if we open this up in Notepad++, notice now that the file has been converted to all uppercase. And we'll just hit enter to end the program. In addition to reading an entire text file into a single string instance, we can also read in each of the lines of a text file into multiple string instances inside a string array. For example, we might want to do this if we only want to process specific lines in the input text file. Let's take a look at this next.